Hello and welcome to the South America Challenge here on HeflaTV HB1. This is going to be a series of best of 3 series throughout the evening. And the first one's going to be Battle Zone versus Sad Void. So EWO's new team facing off against a fairly stable South American team, or at least in the past couple of months has been. For your casters, I'm GrandisV, and I'll be joined by Mr. More Rage, please. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and thanks for asking. A little bit intrigued to see how Battlezone fares in the start of this tournament. A little bit of your Peruvian all-star mashup here. They got Zinderos from UG, Nihawk, who I assume is Mihawk, along with his comrade Ewo from Not Today, which recently had a little bit of a roster shuffle. So a little bit interested to see how they fare.
Yeah, definitely. Should be interesting. As far as betting odds are concerned, they are favored inside this matchup. And I don't think that's really out of the ordinary. They just have a lot of star power behind them. Draft is going to be a little bit slow to start things off, and while outside of the Lion and Axe that are pretty standard bans, we're going to see Bristleback hit the bin very early on for Battlezone.
Yeah, a little bit odd, especially considering that they go towards somewhat of a physically oriented draft themselves with the opening of the Vengeful Spear, but certainly a very strong support. We saw Lion do a lot of work yesterday in Prime Major, so certainly worthy of that first phase ban. And as you mentioned, Sad Voids going with some very standard stuff. They're going to take out the Troll as well as the Axe. So interesting stuff from everyone here. A lot of focus has been placed upon these physically damage-oriented strats.
Right now, Sad Voids are in a bit of a pickle as far as the draft is concerned. They are kind of forced to pick up the Batrider, and if not pick it up, they leave that in the pool for Battlezone to snag. And with the Vengeful Spirit already, it's very unattractive to actually snag that hero for yourself. They'll open things up with the Earthshaker, and that's fair enough as a nice defensive support, but for now, I really do like Battlezone's first pick, Venge. It just seems to work so well for so very many teams.
Yeah, definitely so. Just really the Swiss Army knife of supports. It offers so much to your team. Helps you melt Roshan, gets you a little bit extra right-click, positioning ability, disable, so the roam is certainly strong as well. You can pretty much do anything with the Venge except for farm the jungle, and often she's good enough in lane to babysit one of your hard carries to allow you to have a little bit more of a greedy 4 position.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll have to see what Sad Voids are going to pick up next to combo with the Earthshaker, or rather to follow it up. Right now, there's not anything that they necessarily need to combo with that hero. They would love to have a great initiating hero on their side, but right now the pool is a little bit limited since the Batrider is less attractive and Axe has already been banned out.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, it looks like they are in a bit of a rut here, taking quite a bit of their reserve time to think about this one. They're going to end up going for the Skywrath, so it's a little bit of a throwback combo here. They definitely have some decent roam potential, a lot of spam in lane. Battlezone actually going to opt for another initiator, another pretty strong offlaner in the Clockwork. Not going to exactly go for the Batrider, but knowing that, as you mentioned, it's not the most ideal situation for Sad Voids to pick that up, they'll leave it there and probably look to deal with it if they do pick it up.
Yeah, I was honestly expecting the Clockwork coming out from Sad Voids, but in some way, shape, or form, I expect Batrider to be involved in this draft. Although Battlezone probably won't pick it up for themselves, I'd expect it to be banned out against Sad Voids. Even with the Vengeful Spirit that does have the swap to break that lasso, it's still a really nice hero to have in combo with the Skywrath Mage.
Yeah, certainly so. Juggernaut ban going to come out from Sad Voids here, and actually, it would have been interesting to see them pick it up. I would have liked to see them pick it up. He actually deals very well with Clockwork. Clockwork's often building into the Blade Mail. You can Omni Slash through that, of course. You have the Blade Fury as well to dodge most of that battery assault within the cogs, but either way, Clockwork's still very nice against the Earthshaker. He's got big animations on most of his abilities, so if Clockwork's able to isolate him, should be a solo kill more often than not. Interestingly enough, we're going to see Sad Voids pick up someone that does deal with the Clockwork fairly well, but not see him picked up all this early too often, and that's the Phoenix.
Yeah, and for Battlezone, they'll snag up the Drow Ranger. I worry a little bit for this Phoenix. Although right now, Battlezone don't have the greatest of spells to actually cancel off the Icarus dive. Magic Missile is a little bit long in coming out, as is the Drow Ranger's Gust. But still, it's going to be a very problematic lane, just with the raw amount of damage that they're bringing to the table with 2 ranged heroes, plus that marksmanship bonus.
Yeah, and that it really is the weakness of Phoenix, especially considering that she's often in a solo lane scenario. So definitely worrisome for him. B-Zone going to go very throwback here. Going to pick up the Drow Visage combo. They do have the Clockwork, so that's not going to buff him up, but they will have a real potential for some split push and even for some balling up and pushing pretty early on. Visage Vengeful Spirit, definitely nothing to shake a stick at in lane.
For sure, and honestly, I'm okay with them not going for the full 5 range lineup with the Drow Ranger. The Clockwork fits pretty nicely, just having a way to draw the focus away from the Drow on the back lines, and make sure that they have some sort of initiation, which a lot of Drow Ranger lineups do lack.
Yeah, certainly. Sad Voids pick up the Slark. I like that pick into a Clockwork particularly, albeit the Gust has a very long duration once that gets up, 6 seconds at max level, so that's a good way to deal with a Slark, not allow him to get under the cover of his Shadow Dance passive. But other than that, he should have a pretty good time here. He can pact off the Grave Chill and even the Frost Arrows just momentarily, so Slark should have a pretty good time as long as he has a decent time farming in lane.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. Right now, for Battle Zone, I'd like to see some sort of controlling mid for them, like a Puck, Razor, Viper. I think one of those three would be really nice for them. The Lycan is actually very interesting band coming out from Sad Voids. It would make the Visage Familiars hit like little trucks, combined with the marksmanship. It's not a combo that I've seen personally, but I can just imagine that the damage that they're pumping out is insane, especially on structures.
Yeah, and really, there's not too much D push coming out from Sad Voids. They got the Fire Spirits, they've got the Earthshaker, Echo Slam, of course, but Skywrath doesn't deal extremely well with push lineups, so I don't mind the ban on the Lycan there. They can pretty much throw up the Wolves and the Familiars, as you mentioned, and not commit too much to structures with that Howl. They should be able to melt structures pretty quick, so I think it's a wise ban coming out from Sad Voids, but it leads a lot open to Battle Zone here. Sad Voids are going to pick up the NS for themselves, so presumably towards the mid lane, and as is very indicative of this strat, a Puck going to be picked up by B-Zone.
Very, very aggressive lineup coming out from Sad Voids. We'll have to see if it's going to work out for them, but more than anything, just really interesting to see their approach this game. All of their core positions are very limited when it comes to the amount of lockdown that they're able to put into the enemy team, and rely very heavily on being not touched by Battle Zone. I fear that they're just going to get consistently kited around, but we'll just have to see how this game plays out.
Yeah, I worry a bit for Ewo's Puck. Ewo did play, I know, at least a little bit in the offlane. Expect this to be mid, and with the silence available to the Night Stalker as well as that Ancient Seal coming out from the Skywrath Mage, he's going to have to be very diligent about his positioning. He can die under the duration of either of those.
Definitely so. Well, to introduce the Radiant side of the map, it is going to be Sad Voids. Karuba's going to be snagging up that Phoenix, going towards the offlane. The rest of the heroes currently down towards bottom. Gix going to be playing on the Slark, Zap Brennigan on the Night Stalker, Kezia on the Skywrath Mage, and last but not least, Gexus on the Earthshaker.
Yep, on the dire side, we've got Battle Zone. Going towards the offlane is Mihawk, or perhaps Mihawk playing up on that Clockwork. The rest of the lineup heading towards top. Zinderals, formerly of UG, going to be playing on the Visage. We've got Guthoxto playing on the Drow Ranger. Ewo going to pick up his Puck, and that leaves Radix on the Vengeful Spirit.
He'll lay in wait for the Phoenix, trying to catch him out before he places his ward, but looks like the Phoenix is just not going to feel comfortable going into there. Garuba is a little bit slow out of the gate, and without boots first, Phoenix really does struggle getting that early vision up with only 285 base movement speed, even if you use the Icarus dive to get out of the gate fast.
Yeah, it looks like he's been picked up a lot of regen, here for this lane, so should be able to spam out some spirits. They do have quite a bit of range, however, with the Visage and the Drow here, so I certainly worry for his ability not to be zoned out in this lane. But it looks like teams will probably trade bounty runes 1-for-1, and we'll get underway with a pretty standard early game.
Yeah, definitely so. Mihawk does find himself the deep ward, however, in order to block the pull and just get vision of the support rotations down towards bottom. So that's very nice for Battle Zone. That just can't be met by the Phoenix. He is in position to potentially dive and steal the bounty, but I think that's pretty darn risky when you're dealing with the magic missile that could come out from the Venge. If the Venge is fast on her fingers, could snag the Phoenix mid-dive.
Yeah, that would certainly be very devastating for Yoruba, but I doubt he'll be running towards the rune, and he actually tries for it, and he's not able to get it. Zinderal's going to pick that up. A little bit of harass coming up from the burn damage, but Mihawk missing his block in the offlane. Hopefully he's able to get the cogs off underneath those trees there. Should help him out.
Oh, looks like he'll be able to do that. It's definitely worth going for it. It's close. The timing was nice by Garuba, just not able to click on that extra bounty. He doesn't get his range creep out in front either, so the lane equilibrium is going to be pretty problematic for him. Looks like he's actually going to fix that. Almost a perfect block from the Phoenix.
Yeah, well played there. So should give her at least a decent amount of experience from this first wave. But either way, taking a look at the mid lane matchup, should be heavily or a heavy advantage for Evo, at least early on before the crippling fear comes out for Zap Brannigan.
But then again, once that crippling fear does come out, the Night Stalker is able to at least threaten the puck.
Yeah.
Killing him in with some rotations, as you already alluded to. The Scarth Mage and Earthshaker coming in, so things could get hairy. It all depends on when Zap Brannigan decides to level up his W.
Yeah, Mihawk going for a cog bot lane actually didn't land it on Kezia, so he'll be able to continually spam him out with these arcane bolts. Got 2 clarities in tow as well, so Mihawk not going to have the best time staying in lane, already rotating back to the north looking for a block.
Yeah, both of these offlaners just not in a great situation. Although for now, Phoenix is eked ahead. I think this really is just going to be the status quo. Both teams have decent zoning when it comes to their supports.
Yeah, and both their wards are going to get dewarded pretty much simultaneously at this point. So now both offlaners rendered blind, and the pulls will be able to be executed by both sides.
Yep, and with this lane ward coming out from Sad Voids, they know exactly where the clockwork is at all times, so Mihawk just isn't able to find any openings. He has caught up to the Phoenix when it comes to experience, but really there's not much potential for them to do much else. Phoenix has managed to get the lane to push into him, however, with those 2 range creeps. This is going to secure him halfway towards his level 3 or thereabouts. Depends on how many of these creeps get denied.
Yeah, Mihawk dropping pretty low, and there's another Fisher in about 5 seconds, but I think he should be able to run under the cover of his tier 1, and we will see Gexos back off for now.
Yeah, but still Mihawk is completely zoned, and he's in fact just going to waddle all the way back towards the lane, whereas the Phoenix, after this nice stroke of luck, is managing to find himself level 3, and although at level 6, Clockwork's able to do a little bit more than the Phoenix, it's just going to be the Phoenix to get it that much faster, and that's pretty scary for the Battle Zone lineup.
Yeah, Zap Brannigan actually holding his own in mid, 9-1 on the CS boards to the 11-2 of Evo. Hasn't opted for an early point in Crippling Fear, so just looking to hit kind of his critical mass in terms of the first nighttime, which is coming out in about a minute.
Yeah, pretty standard stuff all around. Yeah. Both of the safe lane farmers are doing just fine for themselves as well. Slark 14-10 and 13-6 on the Draw Ranger, just slightly behind, but that's not going to last for much longer. Both of these teams are pretty comfortable with the status quo. I think it really depends on these mid laners to make rotations or for supports to rotate into mid before we see some action. It looks like that's going to happen now with Radix on the Venge, as well as a potential roam in from the Clockwork, although Mihawk is still only level 1.
Yeah, he's not going to add too much to the fray here, but if he's able to soak a little bit of experience, should bode well for him at least to have some stability in lane here after Evo having a little bit of unlucky circumstance from the low ground, not hitting much of his attacks, and the Night Stalker innately very tanky, so just with the Venge, they're not going to be able to bring him down.
Yeah, for now that's pretty much just the status quo maintained. I think that Sad Voids are going to be a little bit happier with this, just because their Phoenix is doing pretty well, and doing better than I thought that she would be able to do. Right now we're going to have a pause, and well, that's unfortunate. A little bit of lag, not unheard of in South American tournaments.
Yeah, certainly. It's looking, I think, good for Sad Voids in the early game as well. Their mid is trading better than I would have assumed he would have. The offlaner is, of course, doing leaps and bounds better than his laning equivalent in Mihawk. He's almost eclipsed the level 4 mark, so looking very good now. Slark farming just as well as the Drow Ranger, so that's pretty much a wash. But other than that, I think Sad Voids are happy with just stagnating in lane and finding their farm. The supports, however, for BZ are doing pretty well with their pulls already. Level 3 onto the Visage, and Radix is Vengeful, sitting at 2, so has enough utility to be useful at this point.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that surprises me in mid, like, this looks pretty normal for a Night Stalker puck matchup when it comes to the CS and what have you, but Evo is operating with 9 extra damage advantage coming out from Intro's aura, so I thought that would be enough to propel him ahead, but looks like that's just not the case. This first nighttime is going to be coming through, but with Night Stalker not have any completed items or really any ability to roam, I think this is pretty much just going to be a farming nighttime.
What do you feel like the build from the Night Stalker will be into this one? Kind of your standard phase Urn build, and then into maybe perhaps an Aghanims. I'm not sure how much the vision will do for them. It's certainly very nice when you have heroes like Slark and Earthshaker to initiate, but either way, very elusive lineup coming out from BZ.
Yeah, I think like Phaser and Aghanim sounds pretty darn good. I would like to see Armlet if he's actually able to get a couple of kills to start things off, but yeah, I think it's going to be pretty standard fare from Zap Brannigan.
Yeah, I think presumably you could see a BKB at some point. They really only have the hook and the swap to pierce that, so wouldn't be too bad. It's also good against the frost arrows. He's going to be having a little bit of trouble getting kited around, but he should have a move speed advantage more often than not, especially during the night.
Well, Slark is reconnected, and hopefully we'll be able to get underway sooner rather than later. The nice thing about being so leveled, or low-leveled at this point in the game, is that if Mihawk is involved in any kill, it's going to give him such a large boost when it comes to XP, but really for an offlaner 4 minutes into the game, being level 1 is not really acceptable, and at this point there's nothing that he can do about it.
Yeah, just a very poor situation for him. Bounty Rune is going to be secured bottom by Kezia as well as Gex, so they'll give that over to the mid laner as the first night dawns, and he's going to go look to make something happen. Mihawk, not the greatest target just because he really doesn't give much, especially if you're committing quite a few heroes, so look for Zap to find a little bit more farm in the mid lane, maybe get another level up in the Hunter in the night, and then look to roam perhaps towards the top.
He's gonna go aggressive onto Ewo, but with no silence, it's just traded nukes. The Phoenix does find herself level 4 after one more creep dies. But yeah, really it's unclear where the first blood is going to happen, as neither team really seems comfortable in rotating, or is just a little too comfortable in staying passive. The Vengeful Spirits may be looking for an opportunity to magic missile, but yeah, without a smoke, I don't think they kill off Karuma.
Yeah, the Visage has opted for a second point into Grave Chill, which is a little bit interesting up against a Phoenix who has the Icarus dive. But either way, it doesn't really need the Gravekeeper's Cloak this early on. Hasn't really been aggressed upon by anyone. So I don't mind it as long as they look to rotate him around sometime soon. Drow is not going to have his farm stifled by this Phoenix. So expect Zindaros maybe to get active with the Venge sometime soon. Rotating him with a haste is Ewo, though. And he's going to expend the coil here. Dive is going to break it, but the orb shot through. Gust is there as well. One more right click. Ewo finds the first blood for Battle Zone.
And a pretty easy one it was too. All it takes is a crucial rune, and they'll be able to find it. Mid lane, however, they're going to be paying with Vengeful Spirit, or are they? Magic Missile in return is Zap Brannigan. His movement speed at nighttime means that he's able to get up to his high ground and keep himself safe. For now, it's just the Phoenix to be a casualty of war.
Yeah, and he's got a full mana pool, so he can run right back in. If he clicks on Ewo, he knows he only has enough for an orb at this point. So look for Zap Brannigan maybe to make something happen. He's going to look to find the rune beforehand, though. Mihawk going to try and secure it for his mid laner bottom, but he's going to run into Gexos here, and the Fisher is available. He's going to cog a little bit too late. Bounty Rune goes towards the Earthshaker, but no aggression going to happen off of that. Night Stalker looking to find something with a double damage rune activated. He's going to run into Zindarol's top lane, and they're going to look to wrap on him with the Phoenix. Ixorus dive forward, the Crippling Fear used there, but the Void onto Guthux, though. He's going to get a nice two-man gust, but he'll still drop to one big right click. Soul Assumption turn from Zindaros. He'll find a kill, but it's going to be a double kill going the way of Zap Brannigan. Void going to finish it off there, and certainly worth it for Sad Voids.
Yeah, especially considering Phoenix got the experience from the Dro kill, and even just on paper, the Dro for the Phoenix is pretty nice, and then you get the Visage on top of it all. Double damage rune on Night Stalker at this point in the game is one of the scariest, if not the scariest rune that you can have.
Yeah, so very nice little engagement there. Going the way of Sad Void. Score is now 2-2. Everything else pretty much stagnant. And Mihawk almost going to pick up level 3 here, so perhaps he gets another level into the Battery Assault, or gives his team a little bit of vision with the utility build. But either way, he's going to try and recover here. As you mentioned, Phoenix picking up that experience almost has his level 6.
And that's scary. Icarus dive in mid. They find out Ewo is silenced for too long. The puck just can't respond. Even at only level 1 at nighttime, a 5-second silence is pretty much a death sentence if your name is Puck.
Yeah, such a great value point there for the NS, and he's already made great work of this first nighttime. Has the full treads and the urn on the way here soon, so looking very good is the NS in the mid. A little bit of an unconventional pick thus far, has panned out very well for SV.
Yeah, and I expect they'll be able to keep this up right now. Battlezone just don't find themselves in any situation to where they're able to actually put any pressure onto the enemy team. And with the Draw Ranger lineup, you'd really like to start doing that in the next 5 to 10 minutes, but really it feels like Mihawk's poor performance in the offlane is stymieing them quite a bit. They'd love to have a hook shot, and that feels kind of mandatory. Smoke up in mid, Vengeful Spirit and Puck might find an Earthshaker.
Yeah, they were going to look to Pinsir and Mihawk, but unfortunately Gexo's caught out. Magic Missile, Coil onto 2. Illusory Orb runs through. It's going to get snapped by Zap Brannigan, and nade time is going to come as well, but they just don't have the MS to chase him down. Slark going to try and come in from, actually just farming up the lane. Kezia coming in from the east is going to rotate back, and he'll be fine for now.
Yeah, in the end, a decent pickup for Battlezone, and it gives a lot of experience towards the Clockwork. He is catching up slowly to the Phoenix, but we do have that Supernova up for Karuba. Battlezone have a good team at killing off the egg, a decent amount of attack speed from most of their heroes, and a lot of range as well to back it up. So I don't think this is going to be the most impactful Supernova, especially at level 1, but it's still a nice tool to have at your disposal if you can have enough CC to back it up.
Yeah, I like the decision for a little bit of a recovery mechanic from Battlezone coming out. They picked up a Morbid Mask onto Guthuxto and put him in the jungle, gave Zinderal some space in lane, and after that solo kill on the Phoenix in top, he's level 7.5 right now, so looking pretty scary. Full levels in Soul Assumption, he's got his familiars up, and they can start to look to take a little bit of a gold advantage in the way of structures.
Yeah, and I think this is probably one of the biggest pickups they'll get for a long time. When it comes to just the raw leap in power, getting those familiars is huge for Visage.
Yeah, certainly so. Marksmanship up as well. 2 Wraith Bands going to go for that max Agi build. Expect a Yasha to come out here sometime soon for a good Thuxto. Level 5 now picked up by Mihawk, and he's not too far behind the Phoenix, only a level at this point. Once he picks up the hook shot, you feel like that level 6 clock probably a little bit more valuable to your team than a level 7. Phoenix mid lane, Coil getting committed, but the Dream Call, Wave of Terror going to go through, but the Invis Rune keeping Zap Brannigan safe for now. Would have been a very big kill if he was able to jaunt forward for the Waning Rift.
Yeah, maybe Battlezone should have been a little bit more diligent when checking the bottle of the Night Stalker. If they had a Sentry, it would have been a pretty easy kill.
So that's a little bit unfortunate for them. Full Tread's going to be picked up now by Guthuxto on the Drow Ranger. So he's looking fight ready at this point. They can probably ball up off the back of the cooldown of the Dream Coil and look to find at least a tier 1 in the offlane.
Yeah, and it should be pretty easy for them to take as well. Gix on the Slark has been left completely alone. Hasn't backed off for a Midas or anything of the sort. It looks to be a Blink Dagger build, but I wouldn't be surprised or upset about a Shadow Blade either.
Yeah, it's nice against the cogs. I mean, generally you can rely on pouncing out, but if the Clockwork is good enough to jump in front of you and keep you underneath it, you are going to probably have to expend the Shadow Dance more often than not. So Shadow Blade, not terrible in this one. Top lane, though, Crippling Fear, Void going to go out onto Zinderals, and Zap Brannigan really slow from the Grave Chill. However, they are rotating in some support. Frost Arrows, Gust going to be there, Soul Assumption. The Fisher going to slow things out, though, but the Frost Arrows are keeping Zap Brannigan kited. He's going to get Soul Assumption down by Zinderals. Phoenix going to be the next to fall. He actually drops his Supernova, trying to tick down the Visage, who's running away, and he will get out of the range, and they'll bring down the egg as well. Big win going the way of Battlezone.
Yeah, that Night Stalker surviving for a long time up against Battlezone's lineup, but in the end, doesn't matter. As said, Voids just didn't have enough backup to bring in, and now we do have Mihawk getting his crucial level 6 up on that Clockwork. Battlezone have found themselves a big opportunity. Night Stalker dying once is actually a pretty big deal. It takes a lot of momentum away from the hero.
Yeah, especially during his ultimate's duration, and also he was quite ahead of most of these heroes in terms of XP. Take a look at the levels. He's right at the top of the chart, so feeds over quite a bit of XP to almost the full lineup of BZ. Meanwhile, Mihawk in lane, as you mentioned, picking up some solo XP, has found that ever so coveted hook shot.
Well, with things looking up for them, we'll have to see if they're going to be able to find any major objectives. For now, it's just going to be Sad Voids taking a tier 1 tower in bottom, and pretty easily too. With the Slark, just a little bit of low time is all he needs to snag that up. Mask of Madness is going to be the choice for the Drill Ranger after the PTs, and it is a possibility that we see an early Roche coming out from BZ's lineup. That is, especially if a Medallion gets picked up by one of these supports. But for now, Visage rushing straight for the Ags, and Venge is poor as dirt.
Yep, it is going to be the Shadow Blade, as you mentioned, for Gix, so he's going to bring that out, along with his PTs and his Aquila. Look for him to start to get active now. He's level 9, has been left completely alone, 90 CS at this point, and really should look to start to press his advantage here. If you allow BZ to start to ball up, they're going to be able to establish some semblance of map control, so really need to find some pickoffs here. Ewo invised up mid lane. Mask Man is going to be popped, but wisely so. Zaprangan gonna back off. He's moving at 448 MS at this point, so just fine to get away.
There is a fresh Blink Dagger up for the puck, although it is going to take a while to deliver that item out. Still, potential to set up an engagement for Battle Zone. It is not unexpected for Sad Voids that the puck has a Blink Dagger, but at the very least it hasn't been shown off. However, they might get the jump first as they're smoked up with Kezia, Gexes as well as Zap Brannigan leading the charge behind their Slark in bottom.
Yeah, I mean, they're expecting a Roshnik at some point in this game, which is certainly warranted with the lineup that BZ does have, but they're going to response smoke themselves right into the pit. They're going to have the Vengeful Spirit have her smoke pop, so they know the enemy is nearby. Zap Brannigan, probably privy to this fact, is playing pretty safe at the moment. Does have his ultimate available to him, has got his whole lineup smoked up. He's going to pop that and jump in. Radix is already really low. Big Fisher's going to hit on many. Supernova right in the pit. The next to fall, 2 down already. In the Cogs, they're going to drop an Echo Slam onto Nihawk. Cogs are going to push the Slark up to the high ground. They'll get 1 return kill onto the Earthshaker, but Nihawk gonna fall now. Mystic Flare completely gonna whiff here. Zinderos dropping low. The Illusory Orb gets through Zap Brannigan, but they're gonna chop down the puck as well. And Zinderos is left all by his lonesome. That's a full team wipe. 5 for 3. Triple kill going Gix's way. Triple kill going the Visage's way. But either way, nobody gonna claim Roshan off the back of that engagement.
A huge bloodbath. Big gains for both the Slug and the Phoenix and the Visage to a certain extent, and that's a pretty good hero to actually get that extra.
Yeah.
Since it is going to propel him towards the Agnum Scepter, which is pretty huge. In the end, it feels like that's not the end of the world for Battle Zone, but still a 1 fight for Sad, or for Sad Voids.
Yeah, and if you take a look at the net worth, Jix has really just skyrocketed up the charts after surviving that entire engagement. Already sitting at 7,700 net worth, about 2.7k ahead of his next competitor, and he's got 2,200 gold up towards his next item in his pocket. So look for him to start pressing his advantage and widen the gap, and look for at least a Roshan to be taken by BZ here. They're only going to commit the Drow Ranger and the Familiars into the pit. Now, Concussive Shot is going to go out. Gus will be there. Fisher going to interrupt things here. Icarus dive forward. Mystic Flare going to whiff once again. Soul Assumption flies through. It's going to pick off the Skywrath Mage, but Zap Brannigan jumping in is going to find Radix with 1 last right click. He's going to be able to run away as well. Coil going to be committed to bring down the Phoenix, but Zap Brannigan to the north should be just fine to get out of this one. Doesn't have a TP, however, and may look to re-engage. Meanwhile, on the south side, they bring down the Drow Ranger, but Gexos will be the trade. He gets a Fisher off as a glancing blow before going down, and Hook's gonna land on his own teammate. Jix jumping through is gonna bring down Nihawk as well. This Slark is unkillable. Zindero's gonna get the Grave Chill off. He should be able to run away, with the Void actually gonna be there to bring him down. And once again, Sad Void's looking pretty good in the skirmish.
Yeah, Zap Brannigan now with the silence up on the Ewo, and with Ewo having no mana, he's completely screwed. They'll drop him an Ancient Seal into him as well, and now Sad Voids find themselves with another huge team fight advantage. The Slark and the Night Stalker this time going completely unanswered. 3 for 5 again. Battle Zone, all they wanted is that Roshan, but Sad Voids are not going to give it to them.
Yeah, and the Drow Ranger really has been susceptible to this kind of in-your-face lineup coming out from the Night Stalker and the Slark, and she is really not doing well in these engagements, has had her farm and her experience stifled pretty heavily as they've tried to prioritize this Roche. So good on Sad Voids to know that that's going to be a very big part of what BZ's lineup intends to do, and they've been punished heavily a couple of times.
Yeah, this is going to transition into an Ogre Club, as well as 1,500 gold on top of this for Zap Brannigan. Looks like it's going to be a Black King bar up for him. But regardless, they're just getting a lot of big items. Jumping in mid. Ewo's going to get turned on with that Ancient Seal. Puck going blind in mid. Just not something that you can afford to do when the supports are missing, and that's why.
And he has nowhere near enough firepower to bring down that Night Stalker, so not sure exactly what his intention was there. Maybe needed to phase shift out earlier and look for the jaunt, but as we mentioned earlier, those silences really proving a detriment to his ability, and since he's picked up that Blink Dagger, really hasn't done anything else to write home about, so a little bit worrisome. Zinderos, however, is about to pick up his Aghanims in the jungle here. He just picks up enough gold now, and that's going to be a nice pickup for them, but not sure it's good enough to turn the tides of the game.
Yeah, it will allow them to have a lot of damage, but really right now what Battle Zone are struggling with is just getting controlled up. And I don't think this is going to fix it. The Visage is currently the top net worth of their team as well, which is problematic, especially when you look at the Slark. He's currently 3,000 ahead of that.
Yeah, he's already picked up an Ultimate Orb, 1,500 gold available to him as well. So Scotty probably going to come out pretty quickly here. Definitely expect it to be sub 25 minutes. And that's going to be very scary for the lineup of BC. Already 2 level 13s sitting over on Sad Void's side. Highest level is 11, shared by the Tricore of Battlezone.
Right now, Battlezone, it kind of feels like they do need this Roshan to bring them back into the game, but after 2 failed attempts, it doesn't look like they want to go for that now. Instead, maybe settle for a pickoff coming out from the Clock and company. But up until then, the Clock just hasn't been able to find any solo pickoffs or even pickoffs with supports inbound. Battlezone are a little bit lost when it comes to what they're able to do with their lineup. They'd really like to be able to take down these tier 1 towers and some early fights. They'll look down towards bottom, but the Slark might end up just popping this smoke. For now, that's not going to happen. They're just going to sit behind the Clock.
Yeah, looking to use Nihawk as bait, but it doesn't seem as if Sad Voids are going to bite at this point. They do have the vision of the familiars, one familiar at least rotating through, and the sentry is going to be dropped here, safely so by Battlezone, but they're not going to find anything, and it looks like SV are going to continue to split the map and farm up, get their NS a little more in mid towards that Black King bar.
Yeah, pretty much just a static game, at least for now. Ewo's looking for an angle to initiate, but Battlezone just can't find it. They'll instead just look to Deathbell down this tier 1 tower in bottom lane. They will be able to do it as long as they get up to that point. But honestly, I think Sad Voids would be okay taking trades or even just defending this tower. I think they're strong enough when it comes to a team fight that they can do it. This time around, the Supernova is going to be a little bit harder to get off since they aren't finding it such a choke as Roshan could. But with the ultimate pop by Zap Brannigan, they'll look to jump. He gets double stunned up by the Familiars, Grave chilled by the Visage. They'll throw a Void in his way, but on the backlines, the initiation coming out from the puck is going to be turned around as it Dro's the one to fall down. Now Zinder's just getting right-clicked to death. He'll lose the Skywrath Mage in return, but Zap Brannigan's running rampant throughout this fight. The Slark is forced back, and Gix for now can't find anything to stick on. Mihawk is going to be forced to straight TP out. Nightstalker doesn't find anything else, and for now, a 2-for-2 plus a tier 1 tower going for Battlezone. That's probably as good as it gets for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the greatest trade, but they'll take anything at this point, as you mentioned. And having the tower certainly makes it, in a sense, worth it for them. But once again, they lose the Drow right at the beginning of the engagement. And the cogs from Nihawk just not good enough. Didn't catch anyone. And well, as you mentioned, Nightstalker running around free roam in that fight. And even Jix really left unchecked. And now 2,600 gold in addition to that ultimate orb on the Slark. And he is not too far from the Scotty at all.
Disconnect coming up from the Nightstalker in a terrible time too, as their Shaker has just gotten hookshotted to the head. Quite literally. The animation's a little bit wonky inside the river for the Clock, but regardless, I think Earthshaker is completely screwed here. He has 9 stick charges, and maybe he can drop an Echo Slam and hope for some backup, but it doesn't look like anybody's close enough to help out.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a stick, so he gets an Echo Slam off, if that, and he probably falls here. He's only sitting on 530 HP, and as we mentioned earlier, Battery Salt's pretty good against what he has to offer, so should be a nice kill for Nihawk and get him towards that Blade Mail, but still pretty underwhelming is this Clockwork at this point.
This is going to be nice for him, and is going to get him very close to the Blade Mail. There you go, Gexos isn't going to do anything. He'll try to drop an enchant, but that's it. Clockwork finds himself a nice kill, and, well, there you have it. He now has his first completed item.
Yeah, speaking of items, the Black King bar going to come out in full effect now for Zap Brannigan, so if we thought he was running around completely unchecked in the team fights beforehand, it's going to be very difficult for them to kite him around. Now, they're going to have to save the hookshot and the swap for him or for their allies defensively on whichever target he chooses to go on. But Roshan been scouted out now with the Tri-Familiars from BZ, and they should be able to bring this down fairly quick, but already a response has been queued up from Sad Voids.
Yeah, even though they do take Roshan very fast, they don't have a medallion up, and they're just not in any position to do this. The Familiars get dropped low, but every single one of them survives. Battlezone, in the end, will just fall back, as Sad Voids are happy to farm up on their side of the map, waiting for those big-ticket items on the Slark and the Nightstalker both. And speaking of the Slark, he is almost at that Scotty mark. Very scary amounts of far.
Yeah, and both those heroes, being as aggressively in natured as they are going to force the draw to go for a defensively oriented build, probably building into that Black King bar with that Ogre Club pickup. So she's not going to have a very significant amount of damage anytime soon. Of course, she does buff up the rest of her lineup, but still, they are going to need a little more firepower. So BZ is going to have to look to split the map and find some structures, get a little bit of gold. They only have one tier 1 down to the 2 that are down for Sad Voids, and with a lineup like theirs, they really need to start making something happen.
Yeah, I honestly think this is the biggest issue for Battlezone, is that they just can't keep this Drill Ranger alive enough. Puck going to look to jaunt out to his Illusory Orb, and it looks like he's going to make it out towards the north, but concedes a bounty rune to the Phoenix. Tower structures are going to be fortified as the tier 1 towers getting pushed by Gix and company, but that's only going to serve to delay. I don't think they can do much else. Gix will end up purging off. The stun coming out from Familiar and the silence from the Puck as all hell's breaking loose. Zapper with BKB isn't getting CC'd down, but the damage from the Drow is immense. Supernova going to be activated. They can't actually focus this down because Mihawk is currently inside Cogs. He's trying to isolate these two supports, but can't do enough damage by himself. The Drow also dying. Nothing but get wins for Sad Voids, and it might not be over yet. Zinder is now going to be chased by a double damage Nine Stalker. Silenced up, Icarus dives slow. Zinder's going to be dropped low and might just tick down to this. Ends up surviving with 100 HP. They needed one more smack from that Night Stalker to actually bring him down.
Yeah, unfortunate for them. Would have been a nice call. He's sitting on level 12 and pretty farmed at that. Actually, second highest net worth overall. But still, as you mentioned, big wins overall. No coil expended there, unfortunately, for Battlezone. And once again, Drow Ranger going down pretty damn quickly. So most of their damage is being dealt with very early on in these fights. And we see Zap Brannigan drop pretty low early, but with that BKB, they just didn't have enough burst to bring him down. He's able to get out, reset, and now picks up a point booster on the way to his Ags.
Yeah, it's not getting any easier for Battlezone when it comes to the damage they're able to pump out, because right now Drill Ranger is kind of at one of her soft peaks. Even without any major agility items, she's still doing a lot of physical damage, but Githexto just hasn't been able to find an opportunity to actually abuse that fact and isn't surviving long enough either. Gex now with the freshly completed Scotty and another 1200 gold on top of it. Sad Voids are just consistently keeping ahead of Battlezone's lineup when it comes to the items that they're picking up, and even though the supports are suffering somewhat because of it, no Blink Dagger on the Earthshaker, about halfway there, and Scarith Mage also pretty poor. It doesn't seem to matter because the Night Stalker and Slark are just so free inside the fights. Vengeful Spirit going to end up dying to Roshan. She gets clapped down, but they still secure that Aegis for the Drill Ranger.
Yeah, Hook is going to fly through. It's actually going to whiff. The coil is onto 2, however. They do get the snap onto Kezia. Big damage from the familiars with the Precision Aura are going to bring down the Skywrath, but it's only one right now. Mihawk looking to chase down the Night Stalker. He's not willing to expend a BKB yet. Fisher is going to delay things up. Echo Slam goes through to Ewo. He's dropping very low. Gets the Waning Rift off. He's able to jaunt out to the east, but the Supernova takes down the Drow Ranger. That's just the Aegis, though. They can look to turn and fight this. Zap Brannigan's BKB is on cooldown, but they're going to leave Githexto all to his lonesome. He'll be brought down for a second time, and overall a 3 for 2. Not sure why Battlezone chose to go in minus the Vengeful Spirit and after that Hook whiffs, but either way they'll pay heavily for it.
The damage from the Familiars was insane on the supports, ripping through the Earthshaker and the Skywrath Mage both, but in the end it didn't matter, especially because of that Supernova coming out from the Phoenix. They had just enough focus fire to keep it safe, and nobody from Battlezone could actually focus down that egg, and in the end Karuba's Phoenix play has been pretty spot on, going to be rushing straight towards the Shivas.
Yeah, and we spoke about how ineffective he is relative to a Clockwork, but it seems like he's done a lot more work in this one than Mihawk has, and unfortunately, that's probably because of the start he had. Top lane, they're going to have a jaunt to the north from Ewo. He's not able to get to the Dialfan, and the Pounce is actually going to latch from Gix. He's going to phase shift the Dark Pack, but getting fairly low, is able to blink out even with the Urn on top of him, so didn't take the damage just in time, and Zap Brannigan a little bit too late to the fray. Ewo going to survive, but nonetheless, tier 1, the last tier 1 for BZ goes down in top lane.
Yeah, if Sad Voids were just a little bit closer at that Night Stalker, might have been a pretty easy kill onto the Puck, but regardless, they're going to keep on pushing out and keeping pressure onto Battlezone's lineup. And with only one tier 1 tower falling in the favor of the Dire, that's not really acceptable when you're dealing with a Drill Ranger lineup. It's not something that you can actually play from behind very comfortably, since they just fall too quickly. With 3,800 gold on the Slark, Gix is open to pretty much go for whatever he wants to. If he goes for a Basher, I just don't really see them being able to do anything, or he could further make sure that he doesn't die. Even an Assault Cuirass could be pretty nice.
Yeah, I would expect the Basher to come out. I think Abyssal, like, they've already been able to jump into this Drow's face, but an Abyssal secures she dies more often than not, especially if they've clicked on her and seen that she is opting for a BKB at this point. But yeah, as you mentioned, the gap is so wide between him and his next closest competitor that he can pretty much go for anything, but I would hope it'll be some sort of damage-oriented item at this point.
In the end, it's going to be a BKB for Gix, and I suppose that's fair enough. It is going to stop pretty much anything from interrupting Slark's initiation. I, as you said, would have liked to see something a little bit more aggressively slanted, but in the end, I don't think this changes the fact that Sad Voids are still monstrously ahead when it comes to their team fights. We do have a BKB up on the Dro, so maybe that's going to allow her to survive a little bit longer, but the physical damage coming out from Sad Voids is already pretty immense.
Yeah, and they've got the Scotty to pierce through that and slow her. So they will bring down a tier 1 in the top. Unfortunately, Zinderal's not able to pick it up with the familiars with the last hit. But either way, a nice little influx of gold going their way. That only leaves the mid tier 1 available to the side of Sad Voids now as an access point. But either way, they still have pretty good map control. Both teams been fairly diligent about the vision. Just the one Roshan, maybe the lapse in vision from Sad Voids there for Battlezone. But really, they haven't seen any gains from it as they lost the engagement already right thereafter.
A little bit of sleep at the wheel. Nihawk too far up on the Clockwork, ends up eating an Icarus dive, the slow from Shivas, and a Mystic Flare. You just can't survive that at Clockwork at this point in the game. Pretty easy pickings for Sad Voids.
Yeah, a little bit of split pushing happening mid, but Zap Brannigan going to back off the familiars for now. Zinderal's cheekily enough is going to just rotate them back in and look to find this. Glyph is available, however, and they are probably going to be able to get this deny off with the Karuba rotating in.
In fact, they'll pick up at least one, maybe even two familiars. They'll dive for him on the Phoenix and do pick up two of those birds. In the meantime, Zap Brannigan cleans up a puck with some help from the Earthshaker. That nighttime silence is just so hard to deal with without a Yule Scepter or a BKB on your Fairy Dragon.
Yeah, it's a little bit of an odd pick into the NS, especially considering how quickly they did it. They had some time to think about it, but, I mean, you just look kind of tunnel vision at your own lineup, and Puck really does benefit from the Drow, often in lane. So as you mentioned earlier, maybe they expected him to accrue some sort of advantage, but Zap Brannigan's been playing very well on the Night Stalker, and they're going to take this tier 2 completely uncontested in mid.
They do have that Aghanim Scepter up for the NS too, so full map hack vision is initiated. If you just take a look at that, that's redonkulous. Makes pushing high ground a lot easier, as you can see back up towards their melee barracks. Even if you're not anywhere close, Night Stalker just commands so much attention from Battlezone. They're not going to go for this high ground push yet, instead they'll settle on a slightly easier target in the tier 2 tower up towards top.
Yeah, and don't look for Battlezone to really defend anything unless they have some serious vision advantage and can look to get a very ideal jump. But either way, Roshan is not up for at least 2.5 minutes for them. It's about 3 minutes, I believe. I saw the animation there, so it's not going to be able for or available for Battlezone to run into before their high ground is broken, presumably. And the tier 2 is going to be the next target, as you mentioned. Visage able to pick off that mid-tier tower. It was at 70 HP. Not sure why they didn't deny it. But either way, that's a nice little play for VZ.
Yeah, it's nice, but it doesn't fix the issue that top lane is getting demolished. They'll lose the tier 2 tower for pretty much free. Although Drill Ranger has managed to get down to the tier 2 there, Sad Void should be able to defend this. Although, well, maybe not. Let's see. Drill Ranger does do a lot of tower damage.
They could even go high ground. They're going to look to jump bottom, though, for the first second. I figured they might because the glyph was used on the tier 2, and they did have the fresh BKB available to the Slark, but they'll look to just keep their structures alive, perhaps also considering that Roshan is going to be spawning fairly soon. They're going to want to look to take that and make the secure play before going high ground.
They now have a fresh Vladimir is offering for the Night Stalker, and what this flags for me is that Sad Voids want to end this game shortly, and I think that's a pretty good option for them. They're very strongly compared to the enemy team relatively, and that extra 5 armors can go a long way for the team, as well as lifesteal for the Slark and Night Stalker. I don't think he can really say no. They'll swing down towards bottom and look for a tier 2 there. Mihawk currently deep behind enemy lines with an invis rune. Doesn't find anything with it though, so he's going to be forced back on towards his side of the map.
Yeah, he's sitting on level 11, which is barely above the Skywrath Mage and the Venge. So he's had a very poor time on this Clockwork, and he hasn't really been able to find much ever since picking up that Blade Mail. He has one component on the way to his Force Staff, and he's really just going to be used perhaps to isolate one hero and get out once he picks that up. But either way, Tier 2 is going to be the next targeted choice for the Sad Voids, and maybe they even look to go high ground here. They're going to take away the last access point to Roshan for Battle Zone.
Oh my goodness, those familiars just ripping apart the Skywrath Mage. An innately low armor hero not going for Tranquil Boots, only having one armor to mitigate that physical damage. He just got solo killed. The familiars are going to go ahead and survive. Now they hook shot in, going on to Gix as well as Garuba, silencing up the Phoenix, can't get off the egg. And now Gix isolated, trying to focus him down, but the Night Stalker is outside of these cogs and going to town onto the Venge. Or rather Visage. Finally his BKB's worn off and they're going to be able to burst him down in what's a huge turnaround for Battle Zone. All they lose is their clock.
Yeah, and Roshan is going to spawn very soon here. So fortunate for Battle Zone. We're going to see in about a second or two, 30-second respawn. So unfortunately, a good portion of the lineup is going to be up for Sad Voids. But still, if no buyback is expended on the Slark here, they can easily take that and look for them to sit in the pit and wait for that to come up, knowing it should be soon. Just an excellent play from Zinderos and Nihawk there, distracting them with the familiars and jumping in. Two-man coil and waning rift from Ewo comes out and bodes very well for them in that engagement. They're even able to bring down Jix under the cover of his BKB with all that physical damage.
Unfortunately, Battle Zone do not know the actual Roshan respawn timer, so they're not going to know that he's back up in his pit. Instead, they'll go for a tier 2 tower in bottom, and that's also fair enough.
Yeah, it's a nice influx of gold going their way and a little bit of a map control established from them as well. No glyph available. TP is going to be a bit late from Karuba to look for that deny, but either way, it's a very nice win for Battle Zone, and it makes it a game again.
Yeah, they are coming back into it. If we take a look at that net worth swing, it's a downward slope towards Battle Zone's side. Now only about a 4,000 advantage towards Sad Voids and a 6,000 experience thereabouts. It doesn't change the fact that Slark and Night Stalker are still really stacked, but their supports are struggling pretty heavily when it comes to the gold that they're able to pick up. And outside of the Shiva's guard on Phoenix, they really have nothing. The Visage is making the difference for Battle Zone, it seems, in these fights.
Yeah, Ewo playing a little bit on the edge mid lane. Did have that haste rune though, so wasn't too worried. And he's just able to push the lane out a bit. 3,300 gold available to the Slark at this point. Jake's going to look to scout out Roshan under the cover of his Shadow Blade. Is going to find Rosh available, but no one currently attempting it. However, they do have the Cliff Ward that is scouting out the Drow and the Visage. And maybe they look to initiate here. They're going to smoke up, jump forward. Fisher is going to land onto 2 Echo Slam. Mystic Flare. Zinderos is the first to fall. Can they look to chase down Guthox though? No, he's got the Mask Commandus move speed to get him out. They're not going to be able to cancel the TP despite having vision on Radix, but this should be an easy Roshan going their way. However, there is some split push happening top lane, and that's going to force them back. So well played by Ewo and the familiars from Zinderos.
Yeah, in fact, it's almost going to drop it into deny range. They'll look to mop up these familiars on the retreat. They're just going to suicide them for this tower. In the end, they've only lost one, and that's all they're going to lose. The rest of them are safely in the tree line.
Yeah, definitely worth it there. They also stopped them from going Roshan, and knowing that a couple TPs are down here, they may look to encroach upon the pit themselves. Ewo going to jaunt down to the south. He's going to be joined by Guthoxto here, and no one really in position to contest from the side of SV. So this is a huge play for Battle Zone, despite losing their Visage just a moment ago.
Sad Void's getting a little outmaneuvered here, and Battle Zone find themselves now in a pretty close game when it comes to the raw net worth. The difference is that they have farm on 3 heroes, and Sad Voids only have farm on 2. And it seems to be working out for them. The Slark and the Night Stalker are getting kited pretty effectively. But I think this depends a little bit on Puck's next item. We'll have to see what Ewo's going to settle on. If he gets an Aghanim Scepter, Sad Voids are going to find it really hard to maneuver through the engagement.
Yeah, full Daedalus as well, picked up by Guthoxto. He's sitting on level 17 now, so certainly not as far behind as he once was. And with that Aegis, can play a little bit aggressive. Perhaps is able to net himself a solo kill or two with his BKB still sitting at 9 seconds. And that'll pole vault him back up to relevance. He's already passed the Zap Renegade Night Stalker in terms of net worth.
Yeah, and it is something that you have to keep in mind when you're dealing with Night Stalker. This hero doesn't farm very fast. and does rely pretty heavily on snowballing. They do have darkness at the ready, so Sad Voids can, in theory, fight, but it's up against 6 lives coming out from Battle Zone, and now they have a Yule Scepter on the puck to somewhat deal with that nighttime silence and the Ancient Seal coming out from the Skywrath Mage. Honestly, I'm surprised that he didn't go for this before the Scythe, but in the end, Ewo gets both of the items just the same.
Yeah, and it's a nice tool in order for them to cyclone up an enemy, leave them around. Also, a little bit more to, as you mentioned, purge off that silence and allow him to survive. He hasn't been able to do so in some of these engagements, and we see when he does get a coil and at least a 2-hero Waning Rift on, it really bodes well for them in the fights. Familiars are going to be scouted out once again as the distraction. Zaprangan will get his BKB off. Jump forward. Supernova is going to be popped. Mystic Flare not doing much, and they are able to hook out Mihawk, but everyone going to drop the egg here. It's actually going to explode. Radek's going to drop super low. On the other side, the Yule's up by the puck is going to keep him safe for now. It's currently 2 supports down. Zaprangan and BKB expired. Soul Assumption walks through, and the Orb going to finish him off there. Jix under his BKB going to try to bring down Zinderos, but he's dropping. Been cogged up. The Sunray is going to finish off the Visage. Mihawk with a haste rune trying to get away from Jix. He'll get pounced up though. The Phoenix on the east side will be dropped. Jump forward though. Waning Rift is going to catch Jix, and they're going to need to slow him here. Gust is going to hit from long range, but they are going to get the Hex off, and they'll bring down Slark. That's a 5 for 3 going the way of BZ, and they still have an Aegis on the Drow.
A little bit of miscommunication at last fight coming out from Battle Zone I thought would cost them a little bit more than it did. The Phoenix Supernova was only getting focused down by the Drow Ranger, and she was slowed down pretty heavily, if I'm not mistaken, by the Fire Spirits, or maybe it was just the Shivas. But either way, doesn't end up mattering. Battle Zone are now in a position to where they can put some high ground pressure. 30 seconds with no Night Stalker, no Phoenix, and with 52 seconds, Slark on the sidelines, he'd be forced to spend a buyback if they want to defend. They'll delay this with a Fissure and Concussive Shot into the Guthuxto, but as you've already mentioned, we have an Aegis on this Drow Ranger. She doesn't really care that much, and now they jump in with the Hex onto Kezia, and the Visage Familiars rip him a new one. Even with no damage charges, those things are hitting like little trucks. And they'll bring down one, and now look towards the melee barracks in bottom. Ewo's going to get assassinated by Giggs, or at least try to. He'll be able to phase shift through that, but with the Aegis on the Drow, let's see if she can get out the second time. They've already taken the prize that is the melee barracks. She'll pop her BKB and try to run, but the Scotty Slow is a little too much for Guthuxto, now pursued by the Phoenix. A defensive swap going to buy a little bit more space, ensuring that the Venge is going to die, and it's not going to save Guthuxto either. Battle Zone going to lose a couple, and somehow Venge actually is able to TP out there, but in the end, still worth it for Battle Zone. They get the melee barracks.
Yeah. Very nice play from Ewo. He actually orbed to the west and then jumped out to the east, and they actually followed the orb. So a little bit of like pub style looking play there, but they get the racks there, and that's a very big deal. They lose Guthuxto, which isn't the best. The Radix somehow able to TP out, as you mentioned, but Jix is going to look to find his next item here soon, and really needs to start getting things done. The physical damage has been proven to be enough to burn through this BKB, and as it dwindles down, the rest of their burst is going to come back into relevance, so he really needs to find a next item soon to start doing some more work.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for Sad Voids. At a certain point in this game, and that certain point was about 10 minutes ago, they were looking so commanding, but really all it took was 1 or 2 botched team fights, and Battle Zone are right back into the neck of it just with the raw amount of damage that they can put into these structures. It's by no means over for Sad Voids, but it's advantage towards Battle Zone, and Sad Voids will try to shake this up with a smoke.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, the Night Stalker beginning to fall off around this point. Zinderos, the Visage, has picked up an Assault Cuirass of his own, so he's been the focus of a lot of the brunt of the force of BZ. But meanwhile, they are going to catch out Ewo, so very nice pickup for them. 90 seconds on the sideline is the puck, and they can maybe look to find a push high ground off of this, at least to force a buyback.
Lucky enough for Battle Zone, there is buyback available for the puck, although he wouldn't want to use it. We'll just have to see if the pressure that's being applied top is going to be enough to pull them back, and it looks like the answer to that question is no. Battle Zone are prepping for a high ground defense.
Yeah, a little bit of split push being commenced, but it's only by Mihawk at this point. He needs to get back to base. Glyph's going to be popped very early. Perhaps they look to defend this 4-on-5 without Ewo for the time being, but they're tier 3 taking a lot of damage. Hook in is onto Kezia from Mihawk. He's only going to cog in the 1. They're going to force him out. BKB popped by the Night Stalker. The Mystic Flare is going to bring Mihawk really low. He'll be forced back though. Jix dropping down. He'll pop his Shadow Dance. He's able to bring down the Drow Ranger, and he's able to pounce out to the west as well. They won't be able to get him. Instant buyback from the Drow. They're trying to burn down the Supernova, but it doesn't look like they'll be able to. They will. They get him off just before the last moment, and currently just the 1-for-1, actually 2-for-1 expended the buyback on the Drow, but either way, they do defend racks for now. They're not going to be able to find anyone out on the retreat, but they expend a buyback for a tower defense. Not a huge deal. Actually, the puck buying back earlier on as well, so they need to make something happen off of this.
It's an expensive defense, but I think it's worth it for Battle Zone. They are able to hold the line, and that's pretty much all that matters. Right now, the Familiars are up and running, and Zender with this AC. The Tier 2 tower in mid is going to be the immediate cost of Sad Void's lost team fight, so to speak.
Yeah, they have the BKBs up in about 10 seconds for the Slark, as the Night Stalkers is already up, so they can look to defend high ground here. Venge just spawning up, isn't going to be able to join the fray anytime soon, so look for just a little bit of chip damage, and Bezo not to commit too much, but they're actually going to hook in, jump forward. Hex is going to be there as well onto Zap Brannigan. The Echo Slam going to hit onto 3, but the BKB was up for Guthux though, and he'll bring down the Night Stalker. He's dropping very low himself though. Jix chops him down, and the Familiars are going to get resummoned, but Zinderl is going to get pounced up and brought down. Zap Brannigan with the buyback looking to defend this. Ewo gonna have to phase shift this out. Will he be able to blink away in time? He does, but right into the Alpha Wolf. He's been inserted in, and he does have the orb available to him now, so should be able to jaunt out to the south. Either way, that's the Drow down with the dieback, and the Fisher will be just whiffing in the tree line, or in the fog I should say, from the Earthshaker. Ewo actually gonna look to go back into him. He'll get the coil and the rift off with the Hex. Easy solo kill. Nicely played on the edge from Ewo, but still Drow Ranger down for quite a while without the buyback.
Yeah, having previously spent that, Sad Voids find themselves with an opportunity that they can maybe use to get a set of barracks for themselves. Without the Drow, I don't think the Battle Zone can actually take a fight. Even if they had Visage and his Familiars at the ready, the damage that they do just isn't enough without that precision aura, it feels. They do get a tier 3 tower in mid, but that's all they get. Sad Voids looks like the snapback is going to be an immediate tier 3 in response and should be racks after the fact. Gex is going to focus on the range, and well, I don't think the Battle Zone are going to do much else other than just half-heartedly spam out these waves.
Yeah, they're just going to look to delay things out, and it'll be a free lane of racks, so certainly worth the buyback on the Night Stalker. Hook in, though, is going to catch out Zap Brannigan. He doesn't have his BKB quite yet. He's been hexed up. He'll have it available. He pops it now. The Blade Mail up for Nihawk, but he's dropping low. He's going to be able to force out to the north. Swap back into danger for the Night Stalker. The Arcane Bolt will finish off Nihawk. Jix jumping in under the cover of his BKB is pretty much going to waste it at this point. They're going to be able to Yule's up Chiesa, and he'll get dropped down, but will be able to force onto the high ground and TP away. And luckily, on the edge, Skywrath Mage is able to survive there, but certainly a very nice kill on the NS. They do know this is a dieback, excuse me, at this point, but Clockwork as well, down for 40 seconds.
Very back and forth, at least at this point in the game. Sad Voids are now the ones on the back foot, where Battle Zone have an opportunity to return in kind for a Rax in mid, and maybe they're going to be able to put this together, although it's going to be a little bit harder without their clock, him having no boots of travel. Might end up hurting them, but it looks like they're going to try just the same. Everybody's going to be converging on the mid lane.
Yeah, only 2 Familiars up at this point, not the biggest deal. Resummon is available for Zinderals, but either way, they should look to put at least the range racks down here. The defense can be mounted, but only the 6-second BKB available to Jix at this point is a little bit worrisome. The Blink Echo has been doing a lot of work from the Earthshaker again, so look for some preemptive BKBs to come out from BZ and maybe just take at least one of the 2 racks.
Swap back on the Phoenix. Hexed up Magic Missile. Silence. Karuba is going to be dropped down. The Precision Aura has yet to be activated, but as soon as it is, the Visage Familiars are going to be doing a lot of work. Their Draco Slam catches out 3, and Gix is starting to focus down Cinder. Gix inside the Shadow Dance with the BKB. They can literally do nothing about the Slark, so the Visage is going to die, but his Familiars live on. They'll focus into the barracks. Guthuxto is also going to lose his life, as the Slark is pretty much going unanswered. Gix gets himself a triple kill, and now looks for a little bit more, pouncing away from Mihawk. Gix wants to heal up on the sidelines with the Shadow Blade, and will be able to do so. They try to mop up the Familiars too, but that's a dieback on the puck, and the Drow Ranger is also without buyback. They catch out Mihawk eventually, and we'll be able to smack him down with one big enchant totem hit. Sad Voids are now the ones with the chance to find a high ground push, and they're going to set their sights on top. Last couple of fights have been super topsy-turvy, but mostly in the favor of Sad Voids.
Yeah, Battlezone looking a little bit disoriented in that one, especially the Drow Ranger. Couldn't find a target after Jix found that Shadow Dance, and then he jumps right into his face trying to man up against the Slark, who had already 15 plus Essence Shift stacks. So under the Mask of Madness, the Drow Ranger chopped down pretty quickly, and unfortunately, no buybacks available for everyone except the Visage onto Battlezone, and this should be an easy lane of racks. Nice defense by Sad Voids without their Night Stalker.
They'll buy back on the Visage, but this is a Visage that is absolutely naked without his familiars. Zender by himself, he can offer the AC aura, but that's not enough. To save these melee barracks, and well, they're going to be taken down even with a +5, and he might end up losing his life. The Enchant Totem's going to miss, and that'll save him for now, but now they'll slow him out with the Shivas as well as the Icarus Dive. It will require a Force Staff to keep him alive, but Sad Voids are not going to be so sad as they find themselves a very easy barracks up top, but then again, the familiars in mid take out a melee barracks of their own, and with a resummon in 8 seconds, this is pretty good for Battlezone.
Yeah, it's definitely nice considering the situation that they were in at the moment, and the Roshan is up now, so forcing a couple of heroes back to defend that mid lane may leave an opening for them to pick this up here. This will be very nice considering that the Drow has been able to output quite a bit of damage, but once again, the issue as has been all game is she drops pretty quickly, but they'll be able to melt Roche with the minus armor from the Medallion and the Visage as well as this Drow Ranger. So easy Aegis going the way of the Drow. Cheese goes the way of Zindrals, so they'll be able to keep up that AC aura for a little bit longer to help with the team fight or the push, and things once again looking decent for Battlezone after losing their second lane.
Really, it's all about whether or not Sad Voids are able to fight with their Slark. He's almost completely 6-slotted. If he wants to, he can buy his Abyssal Blade, but that would mean that he's going without buyback, so he's probably not going to do that. Battlezone just going to push straight down mid, and maybe they can just suicide to end the throne. At the very least, they'll get the full lane in mill without much contention coming out from Sad Voids. And if they lose a fight, things could go disastrously. Let's see how this goes.
Yeah, looking at the buyback scenario, it's only Gix's Slark at this point to have it. The Skywrath Mage does as well, but Kezia more or less irrelevant at this point. So they're going to smoke up Zindaros and the rest of the lineup behind Guthuxto. It doesn't seem like Sad Voids are too ignorant to know that the entire lineup isn't behind him, but gonna use him as a battering ram, gonna send up a couple necro units, feed over a little bit of gold, and the familiar is gonna do some chip damage. They'll drop down on 2, that gets the Hex off, jump forward, they're gonna bring Jix very low, they'll be able to hook him up as well. He's gonna get the Shadow Dance off, or has it available still. He will drop though, and he's gonna have to buy back immediately. Supernova is gonna pop off, it'll stun up Guthuxto, but there's no follow-up quite yet, and so far a Clockwork for a Slark and the buyback, and it looks like Battlezone are willing to run out, but jump forward with the Shivas there, and Gix is going to land the pounce. Nice swap back onto Guthuxto. He'll get the gust off, but he's slowed still from the Scotty, and he's trying to get away under the Mask of Madness, but they'll be able to chase him down pretty easily here, and this is a huge death if he goes down. It is the Aegis, but no one available to protect him upon respawn. Should be an easy kill for the Drow. No buyback. This is more or less GG.
Well, Drow Ranger does have buyback, but they are operating without the Visage and without the Clock and the Vengeful Spirit. There's only one familiar at the ready as well. That first fight looked really good for Battlezone. They just weren't able to retreat after killing off that Slark. For some reason or another, Gix doesn't pop the BKB for that first life to get the silence off to ensure he gets the Shadow Dance. So in the end, he falls down, but that buyback, huge for them.
Yeah, now they've got the full 5-man lineup, as you mentioned. A couple men down is BZ. They're still, though, the tier 2 down, so we'll see if they look to go Throne instead. They're already up inside the base. It looks like they're a bit tentative here from the side of Sad Voids, and this is going to allow the Clock to respawn as well as the Venge, so they can certainly look to mount at least a delay, if not a full-blown defense. Waning Rift going to whiff completely, though, from Ewo, perhaps expecting to jump forward and then Yules, but wasn't able to get that off. They'll get a negative earn tick on him as well and chop down a tier 4 with relative ease. They're going for the next one here, and this could be GG. Buyback does come out now from Guthuxto's Drow Ranger. They are going to look to jump in. Mihawk gets the hook off onto Jix. He's instantly Ancient sealed up though and brought very low. He'll be burned down for 68 seconds without buyback, and now they can perhaps look to re-engage.
Well, this is risky. Bottom lane's also pushing in for Battlezone. They've gotten a tier 4 tower for themselves, but all that matters right now is if Guthuxto is able to survive. And it looks like that's going to be the case, at least for the time being. Nightstalker comes up to the tier 3 tower and batters that one down. thrown exposed. Sad Voids, looks like they're just going to take this one down. Battlezone need to do something. They do something now. They bring down Zap Brannigan in a matter of a couple of hits, and now Gix also dropping low. Do they get enough crits? They'll swap him back in. Can't focus him down immediately. The Supernova's going to stun up pretty much everybody. Now the Echo Slam onto 3. They'll be able to bring them down. Die back on the Dro. That's as good as GG. Sad Voids have blown this game wide open and will come away with a Game 1 victory.
Huge Echo Slam coming out from Gexo. Zap Brannigan headlong into that throne, gets absolutely melted, but very nice play coming out from both sides. Certainly a very exciting game. First of our best of 3 is going to go the way of Sad Voids, and unfortunately, Drow Visage strat not going to work out for Battlezone in Game 1.
Yeah, it definitely was an entertaining game, however, and Battlezone showing that they have the strength to take a win over Sad Void, so we'll see if they're able to do it. It is a best of 3, so we'll be back to you with more of this series coming up shortly here on HeflaTV HB1.